All right, here we go. We got my homie, legendary Bun B of UGK in the house.
It's good to talk to you, man. I actually remember DJ Vlad when he was still a DJ.
Yeah, that's actually how we met, off the Tupac Rap Phenomenon mixtape.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was big for me, man. That was big. And something I'll always remember was, I called you up out the blues. We had a friend in common. I said, yo, I want to have you do this verse on this Tupac mixtape, but it's about to drop. And you hit me back like the next day and you're like, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm known for a quick turnaround. That's kind of why I'm featured on so many people's projects, because I'm always quick to turn around. And I'm kind of like how Carrie Fisher was a script doctor. I'm like an album doctor. So when people put their homeboy or their cousin or their artist on the song and it doesn't really work, they call me up to kind of clean up the song. Like, look, well, we did a song about women. He started talking about cars and money. So I need somebody that can do me a verse, stay on topic.
Well, and I remember you told me something that I've always remembered, and you said, when I thanked you for getting it back to me so quick, you said, well, Vlad, rapping is my job, and I take my job seriously.
That's it, man, and that's pretty much, I'm a little more diversified now, so I got a couple of other things I do, but rap is still my day job. And I heard somebody say a long time ago, if you've been working at McDonald's for 20 years and it still takes you 5 minutes to make a Big Mac, you need to quit. So I try to be very, concise with it. And I know there's a lot of shit that holds up people's projects, whether it's sample clearances or paperwork or all the red tape that comes with the industry. I never wanted me to be a reason why somebody's project was held up.
No doubt, man. I definitely appreciate it. And it shows why you're still here all these years later.
Yeah, man. All I got is my reputation as far as I'm concerned.
Yep. Now, you grew up in Texas.
Yes. Born in Houston, lived in Houston till the 5th grade, moved to Port Arthur in the 5th grade when my parents divorced, and kind of came into my own in Port Arthur. My younger years were just, average kid years and stuff, but moving into a city like Port Arthur had a very different dynamic. I grew up in a 2-parent home. My dad had a real good job at with the railroad. And then when my parents divorced, it was a single mom situation. So my quality of life changed a lot when I moved to Port Arthur. And then Houston's a major metropolitan city. Port Arthur's a kind of a small town, industrial town. So a lot of things changed. My whole life dynamic changed once I got to Port Arthur. And that really kind of shaped and molded me into the man I am today.
Well, your dad actually had to drop out of school in the 6th grade to help support his family?
Yeah, my dad dropped out in the 6th grade, and I want to say my mom dropped out in the 10th grade. Because back then, the kids used to have to help around the household. My parents grew up in very, very small towns in Louisiana. My dad's from a town called Ville Platte, and my mom's from a town called Mamou. Both of them are super small towns, and very poor families, you know what I'm saying? So once they were strong enough to kind of help out, that's what they had to do.
Right, and I guess your dad actually had to go work in the fields to help out.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, man, crazy to think about where we are right now to where our parents started out from,
Oh, and my house, the house where my mom grew up at, is still there, So we go and we just, every now and then we'll go back and look at it and see, like the road that they lived on and the road to get to their house they're still dirt roads. They're not even paved today, and it's 2018. So it's crazy, man. Very, very meager, upbringing for my parents.
Mm-hmm. I feel you. Okay, and you said that the town you grew up in was really racist.
Yes. Yeah, Port Arthur, has a reputation for being a racist town, and the town next to it, Bridge City, is the border town to Port Arthur going east, and there's no minorities in Bridge City. And this is probably only 15 miles away from Vidor, Texas, which was the Southeast Texas base for the Ku Klux Klan, and another town that had no minorities at all. Still doesn't have any minorities in that town.
Were you dealing yourself, with racism as a kid in that town?
Not really much, because that wasn't somewhere you went. It was always understood that you didn't go to Bridge City, and you had to go through Bridge City in order to get to Louisiana to go east. And so we were always taught, don't stop in Bridge City.
Wow, it's crazy.
And it's literally
crazy.
There's our town, there's a bridge, and then there's the next town, and there's literally, it's night and day.
So
but
you just stayed on your...
Port Arthur had its own level of racism, because Janis Joplin is actually from Port Arthur. And she went back to her high school reunion and kind of called them out on it. because they, all her friends in school, because all she did was listen to black music and, singers and whatnot. They used to call her a nigga lover, Then they wanted to kiss her ass when she came back.
Yeah, and then she went on to, essentially do black music with Jimi Hendrix and everything.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay, so, while you're growing up in high school and everything, because you talk about, like, on your new album, selling drugs and so forth. Like, were you hustling during that time?
Not in high school, after graduation, because we wanted to do music, you know what I'm saying? And so when we met the guy, and I hate to I don't want to say names, but in order for us to put ourselves in a position to put the music out, there were things that we had to do. And that was one of the things that we had to do in order to put records out. And that was kind of part of me working with the record company as far as that was concerned. Really just kind of going back and forth from Houston to Port Arthur and back, because I knew where to sell the drugs at. He knew where to get the drugs from. So we would score in Houston, get on the highway. Like, we would score at, like, say 10 in the morning, get on the highway, go to Port Arthur. We'd be sold out by, like, maybe 8 o'clock at night, drive back to Houston, re-up again, go back to Port Arthur, get there about midnight or so, sell out by 8 in the morning, go back to Houston, and start the whole cycle over. We would probably do that 2 or 3 days in a row and take a day or two off.
Okay. I mean, in the process of going through that, did you ever have any really bad situations you got into?
Yeah, a classmate of mine who ended up becoming a smoker, tried to beat me for some dope one time. He didn't have the money, and I wouldn't give him the dope, and I just pulled up the window. I was like, I'm not fucking with you right now because you tripping. And he tried to throw his Coke bottle and break the window, but the window didn't break, so I, hit him with the car. He was on a bike, so I hit the bike and knocked him off the bike with the car. Then I got nervous and thought I might have really fucked him up, so I burned off. But I still see him to this day, and he doesn't recollect that shit at all. He has no idea that happened.
Yeah, I guess when you're on crack, you really don't remember much.
No. And he's good now too. He's not dope fiend anymore. So.
Okay, but if that was really your worst situations, you weren't really going through, like, the real serious situations of someone selling cocaine.
No, we never got caught. We only got pulled over on the highway one time, and that was coming back with money. And the guy that I was moving it with had a record store at the time, so he had, like, receipts. He would always keep his store receipts with him from the record store, so that if we ever did get pulled over, which eventually happened, he was like, well, this money comes from my record store.
Smart. Yeah, because, I mean, all the time I've known you've never really struck me as one of these, like, career criminal types.
Well, we only did it to put the music out, right? It wasn't something that I really, I was like, I'm finna go sell dope or whatever, because I knew it was some janky shit. But this is like 1991, going into 1992, and the interstate wasn't hot like it is now, right? Or like it was probably 3 or 4 years after. I remember one incident where, and this is probably the most ignorant shit I ever done in my life. I had like 8 ounces of crack. Like, I put them on the dashboard. I was smoking weed with my feet out the window, like on some crazy shit, like riding back. And some shit I would never do. That I wouldn't put 8 joints on the dashboard and ride around right now. But back then there was no, I-10, the interstate that most people traffic drugs down, wasn't really hot at that time. It didn't really get hot till about 94, 95, when cops started figuring out a lot of these drugs were moving down that interstate. So back then, it wasn't even really a thing. And a lot of people that I knew weren't even really selling dope back then. Probably only 4 or 5 dudes that I knew from Port Arthur or 4 or 5 little cliques were even really moving dope like that.
Now, I guess your original name was Storm Shadow?
Shadow Storm.
Shadow Storm, sorry.
Yeah, and I still am, like, a big comic book guy, so I wanted to create.
That's what I was thinking. It sounds like a comic book.
Yeah, I was trying to make this larger than life persona for myself, and using a lot of big words and this crazy name, and the rhymes were terrible and the name was trash. So a good friend of mine, Sharon Thomas from Port Arthur, was because my nickname was always Bun. So he was like, we're gonna call you Bun B. And because this was back with Eric B and, Joey J and all these hip hop names had these initials on them at the time. So they were calling me Bunny B, and then it went to Bun B.
Right. And I guess you and Pimp C really didn't get along in the beginning. No,
because he didn't know me, I didn't know him. And so we both had these preconceived notions about who the other guy was. And there was a football game we met at for the first time through Mitchell Queen. And he was like, yeah, man, you always talking about you be in Houston, you be around these rappers, you don't be doing that shit. You know what I'm saying? And I actually had just went to an Eazy-E concert in Houston. So back then, all the pictures were taken with Polaroids in the clubs. So they took like 4 or 5 pictures on Polaroids, and while they were like, you know, they shake them around and put them down and wait for them to come through, I snatched one of the pictures from the photo booth. And so I brought that picture to that football game that next week, and when he called me out, I pulled out the picture. So he was like, oh shit, you really do be going around motherfuckers like that. And then, you know, my whole thing with him was like, they say he makes beats, but his beats can't be that great. We're from Port Arthur. We don't have access to that kind of shit. And I went to his house and he had like a little drum machine and sequencer and shit and was actually really making hip hop beats. And it kind of blew my mind at the time, you know?
Well, you guys signed to an independent label out there, Big Time Records.
Yeah, Big Time's actually from Houston. He had a record store in Houston. So we went to the flea market. His record store was in the flea market. So we were in Pimp's, Pimp had an Acura Prelude back then. It was a 2-door, 4-seater, real small ass back seat. So we all piled in that shit. We used to call it the cigarette because he used to smoke all the time. And we all piled in the car. We drove to Houston to the flea market. And he had a sign said he was looking for demos. But we didn't have our demo. So we jumped back in the car, drove all the way back to PA, got the demo, brought it all the way back, played it for him. It was a couple of songs on there, but Tell Me Something Good was one of the songs that was on the demo. And he was like, that's a hit record. I want to fuck with that.
Well, my first introduction to UGK was the Menace to Society soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
Right.
That's the
and that,
remix.
you know, because I was, I was living in the Bay at the time, and you know that was the biggest movie, you know, period. At that
Oh, for
point.
sure.
And Pocket Full of Stones was on that, and it was just like, just such a hard record, you know. And so that was the original version, I guess. That was a remix.
No, that was the remix. We originally made another song for Menace to Society called 93 Mac, but Jive didn't want to clear the sample. And Pimp, while we were in the studio, Pimp was just fucking around making a remix for it. So when they didn't want that song, we just sent him the remix to Pocket Full of Stones.
I mean, it was just so different. Like when you heard Pimp C, you know, I got a pocket full of stones. Like, yo, who is this? Like, this isn't like anything I've ever heard before.
Yeah, it was a very different record, sonically, lyrically, and then Pimp's vocal tone was so distinctive at the time, you know what I'm saying? And we were trying to tell a story that wasn't necessarily promoting drugs, because at the end of the song, we go to jail, we come out, and then we're right back, and we don't have anything, no social skills or nothing, so we kind of go right back to selling drugs again. But we still got banned by preachers in Texas. Like, we would have different, like, pastor coalitions or whatever come to our shows and like boycott us, like in front of the club.
Well, I mean, your line from that song, Pistol Grip Pump on my lap at all times, that became the chorus for Volume 10.
Right. Which was insane. We had sampled people's voices or whatever on records before, like we just talked about. But it kind of blew my mind that somebody listened to my music and was into it that much and wanted to make a song out of it. And back then, I didn't even own my own publishing, so I wasn't even concerned about that aspect of it. You know what I'm saying? We just got our publishing back probably in the last 10 years. So for me, it was just part of the culture, being a part of the culture, making a rap song, having another rapper listening to it, pulling something from it, and making a rap song out of it. And we didn't meet Volume 10 until years later.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, on the West Coast, that was a big record.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is on that same song, you say, fuck Black Caesar, people call me Black Trump.
Again, another regrettable moment. But at the time, it wasn't a bad thing to associate yourself with somebody. It's really more just about associating yourself with somebody that was, doing it big, had a lot of money, lived a very glamorous, luxurious life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously in modern times, that doesn't necessarily work.
To be fair, around that time, like a few years later, Raekwon dropped Incarcerated Scarfaces, where he calls himself the Black Trump also. So, people were, I think Smith & Wesson ended up sampling that and having a song called Black Trump. So a lot of people were doing it. It wasn't just you.
No, and then you look at Jay-Z, they named their record company Rockefeller, after the Rockefellers, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, at the time, we were young inner city cats trying to associate ourselves or identify ourselves as men of money, I guess, for no other way to put it. And so these were the kind of things that we would want to compare ourselves to and the kind of liquidity I think that we would want to have at the time.
Right, but unfortunately, because your record deals were so bad, you guys were not making any money.
No, we didn't make any. We didn't get any back in. I've never gotten any royalties per se from any of the albums we made as a group under Jive Records. I'm probably still in the red in the Sony system somewhere. Jive as a record company doesn't exist anymore, but I'm probably the UGK account. I'm pretty sure it's still about $2 million in the red right now.
Yeah, man. I mean, the reason I started VladTV is because I did a movie deal with a movie company, and I'm still in the red in that too, even though it was on Showtime, and
Well, when I saw James Cameron
shit
was still in the red, apparently from Titanic, I was like, well, goddamn, if a man makes a movie that generates $1 billion and they got accounting that says he still owes, this shit is some whole other shit that we don't even know about. And the way they would pacify artists, they'd be like, well, you're still in the red, but we can give you another advance for the next project. So that would, that would kind of be the only way that we would get any more money from the record company. So a lot of artists from my generation live purely off of touring, merchandise, and features.
Well, you guys dropped multiple albums. I mean, on Jive, you guys dropped your first album, and then you followed it up with Super Tight, and then you followed that up with Riding Dirty, which to me was my favorite album.
Oh no, it's pretty much the seminal album from UGK.
Yeah, I mean, Diamonds and Wood, like, I still listen to that to this day. Like, I absolutely love that song.
Well, the whole album was created as about the nightlife in Texas, you know what I'm saying? What it was like being in the streets of Houston and Port Arthur, with the slabs, the candy paint, sipping syrup, all of that kind of stuff that was a part of that lifestyle at that time. And that's why the album cover is us in the car, because it's really kind of like us riding around through the city at night. And if you open it up, we're actually getting jacked in the artwork inside the album, and we're getting jacked by a local group called the Botany Boys. So they were like friends of us, and we shot that in front of Screw's house, like right on the street in front of Screw's house.
DJ Screw was becoming a real force at this time.
Absolutely. In the streets of Houston, especially predominantly the south side of Houston, Screw was a very big deal in the streets. This was when he still was at the house and still like selling cassette tapes out of the crib. He used to have just a regular driveway that would go up to his front door, but he started getting so much foot traffic he had to put a gate up. And so at certain times on certain days he would open the gate. So you would go by Screw's house and there would be just cars up and down the street waiting for Screw to open the gate so you could go in and get the next tape. And this guy was selling, thousands of cassette tapes from his house. I remember taking him to Sam's back in the day to buy boxes and boxes of Maxell cassette tapes back then. I say it on Beanie Siegel's song Purple Rain, back in 94 before Screw had the gate up.
In the year 2000, that was kind of an interesting year because, number one, that's the year that DJ Screw ended up dying.
Yes.
Okay. And lean culture, because, being from the Bay, from Cali, you didn't really know about lean until you started hearing about Screw music and, the Texas movement and everything else like that. Being the epicenter of that whole thing when DJ Screw died, apparently from a lean overdose, how did that affect everybody?
Well, a lot of people were very sad about, losing him. He was a local hero. He wasn't just a DJ or a musical icon. He was a hero. You know what I'm saying? He gave a lot of guys careers, followings. People still take care of their families because of their association to DJ Screw. And so it was very off-putting for a lot of people. And then at the time, people kind of had to make a decision on what they were doing. So you heard a lot of people talking about, yeah, we giving up drink and we gonna stop drinking drink. And Pimp had a very different take on it. Pimp was like, y'all not finna quit sipping drink. None of us gonna quit sipping drink. Let's not be hypocrites at this time. You know what I'm saying? We can acknowledge it's fucked up and it's not a cool thing to do and that people who aren't already doing it shouldn't be doing it. But let's not act like at some point we're not gonna pull up again. And a lot of those dudes at that time that said they weren't gonna sip anymore, still sip. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And some of them are still sipping syrup to this day.
Right. And, we ended up losing other Texas artists from lean as time progressed.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. So, but in that same year, you guys had your breakout year.
Absolutely.
Well, number one, Sippin' on Some Scissor came out.
Right.
Which was my favorite 3 6 Mafia song.
Oh, really?
By far. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know, me and DJ Paul are friends. Like he's been on VladTV a bunch of times. We talk all the time. He actually told me in an interview that they almost died recording "Sipping on Some Scissor" with you guys.
We almost died making that song, man. It should have been a hit.
You almost died making that song.
Yeah, we went and recorded this song, and when Atlanta had the, what was that, the Super Bowl they had down there in 2000 or 99? One of those years, maybe 99 or early 2000. They had the Super Bowl or something big they had there that year, and it snowed.
Okay.
And it was fucking snow all over the place, and we had a bad wreck. Well, we almost had a bad wreck on the way down there to make that song, and it was so weird. We sped off the road into the oncoming lane.
Oh.
And rigs and cars was coming at us that couldn't hit brakes because of snow. So me, Juicy, and some of the other boys, we jumped out the truck and started running. My guy stayed in there trying to start the truck like on TV. And it wouldn't start, like, looking at the car. It finally got started. He went, drove off and went over in the grass. And the car went, the rig came through. I was like, holy shit. I jumped for it. Lost my Sky Pager.
Right.
Had Sky Pagers back then. And I needed my Sky Pager to get in touch with Pimp C when I got in town. So it was hard for me to find him. I had to some kind of way I found him through like somebody at the radio station or something. And anyway, on the way back, we was riding and I saw our little tread marks in the grass. I figured it was ours. I kind of remember where it was at. I said, man, pull over there, man. Let me see if I find my pager. Found my pager in the snow.
So we recorded it in Atlanta in January, like during Super Bowl. And so the roads in Atlanta were iced over and they drove down. So I think they had like a car situation. Funny story, we all went to Pimp's house that night to record. We got there at the same time and Pimp he literally lived in a house on the hill at the time. So his driveway kind of spiraled up the hill, but his driveway was iced over. So the only way we could get up to the house was to form a human chain and walk up the grass along the side of the sidewalk. I actually, when it came time to cross over the driveway to get to the house, I slipped and slammed my face into the concrete, into the frozen concrete. And my face was literally cold for 2 days. Like the left side of my face was frozen for 2 days. It's the craziest thing. But that was actually, the beginning of it we had talked about forming a group, the Underground Mafia, which is gonna be 3 6 Mafia and the Underground Kings. So that was the night that we recorded the first songs for Underground Mafia. So we did Sippin' on Scissor for them, and they did a song with us called Like a Pimp. So if you go and listen to, I think Like a Pimp is on Dirty Money, the album after Riding Dirty, you'll hear that song. So that was like the beginning of us doing the Underground Mafia project, but unfortunately we never got to finish it.
Yeah, sad.
Yeah, I know.
Too bad, man. That would have been crazy.
Oh no, it would have been insane. Just the production on this album would have been some of the craziest beats I think hip hop would have ever seen. Just those minds, because Paul and Pimp were very, very much aligned with their musical sensitivities. Everything around them sonically was the same thing about us, having those, high tempo drum patterns, double time, deep bass rhythms. And they were both highly knowledgeable about music. And they drew from a lot of the same different inspirations. So I can only imagine what those minds together would have done with 12 tracks.
Well, and then Big Pimpin' came around.
Yeah.
And I guess Too Short said that Tupac almost kept Pimp C from doing Big Pimpin'.
Yeah, Tupac was already dead at that time, right? So Pimp in 2000, Tupac was dead. Pimp used to have a picture on his wall of Tupac. And whenever you would ask him something that required deep thought, he would look at the picture. And we'd be like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm asking Pac what he think. He was very, very aligned in with the personality of Tupac, not really the musician, but the character of Tupac, the personality, and how he carried himself as a man in the world and in the culture. And if it was something that Pimp thought that Tupac wouldn't do, Pimp wouldn't do it. And a lot of people don't know that Pimp had got called to be on just a week ago. So Pimp was actually supposed to be on just a week ago with Jay-Z and Too Short. But this was during the West Coast, East Coast beef. And so Pimp had just built out this brand new studio in his house in Atlanta. He was like, yeah, man, I got the studio, come on down and do the song. You know, we'll record the song at my house. And Jay was like, well, I'm not leaving New York right now. Pimp was like, well, shit, I ain't leaving the South. So I guess we ain't doing it. And this was before Pro Tools and people being able to send music over email and shit like that. So in order to do a song with somebody, you literally had to send them the 2-inch reel of the song from your album, like ship it on a plane or something. The person would record on it and then send it back. It was a lot of trouble to get a feature back then.
Right. And I guess Pimp C just did not want to do Big Pimpin'. He didn't feel like it was a good look for UGK.
No, to be honest, he was very concerned about the perception of it because Jay-Z had just done Hard Knock Life, so he was the biggest thing since sliced bread in hip hop at the time. He had a really big following, but his direction and our direction weren't necessarily the same. And Pimp was concerned that people who had never heard of UGK, who would have heard this record, would have had a preconceived notion about our sound, which was crafted by Pimp C, who had basically given his whole life over to creating this individualistic sound. And he wasn't crazy about the beat at all either. You know what I'm saying? He was like, I ain't really got no problem with Timbaland, but that shit not jamming. And so I kind of had to use reverse psychology. I was like, well, fuck it, if you don't want to do it, we won't do it. We'll just miss out on this big ass opportunity. So then it became, all right, B, I'm gonna do it, but I ain't giving him but 8 bars. So I kind of overcompensated for him not being on it. So that's why my verse is so long and his verse is so short.
Okay. And that song, I mean, not only, I mean, was that UGK's biggest song ever?
I mean, it's probably the most listened to song that UGK has ever been on, but the biggest UGK record of all time would definitely be Players Anthem, International Players Anthem.
Well, I mean, not only was this a huge song, Big Pimpin', but
Well, it's the biggest song
not...
in Jay's repertoire by far.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
and it was also
he doesn't have any other song that got more radio play, any of that type of shit.
Yeah, and it was nominated for a Grammy.
Yeah, but he was boycotting, so we didn't get to go.
Okay, well, so you guys actually were nominated for a Grammy as well.
Yeah, definitely. And from a publishing aspect, we actually at the time had more of the song than he did. So that's why you hear a version where there's extra lyrics on the song, because that kind of evened up the split on the song. But then we ended up doing it as a work for hire anyway. So when they got sued for the song, we didn't get sued.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you go.
But he won the lawsuit, so I guess in retrospect, he kind of won on that. But we got paid more for that song than we got paid for any other song we've ever done, any other feature.
So you guys go and drop your 4th album,
Dirty Money.
Dirty Money. Was there an incident between Master P and Pimp C?
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about, man. People ask P, they ask P about that. He don't know what they talking about. I don't really know what they're talking about. And if there was a situation, it's old news, and there's no need to really bring it all back up. Nobody needs to really rehash all that type of shit. It's not anything that we're proud of, the whole thing with that, because it was a third party that kind of stirred it all up. So it wasn't that P had a problem with us or we had a problem with P, but some third individual said some shit that wasn't true, and that kind of ignited the whole situation. But I mean, as far as like a beef or anything, feud or anything like that, no, we're good.
Well, the reason I mention it is because I was reading Pimp C's book.
Yeah.
And, you know, prior to the incident where he got arrested, I guess he was carrying a gun because of this alleged incident.
Right. I could see that. It wouldn't be uncommon for Pimp to carry a gun around that time. Me neither, for that matter.
Okay. So Pimp goes to a mall.
Yes.
He gets into an argument with like a girl and a couple girls and a guy or whatever else.
Right.
Can you explain in your own words in terms of what happened?
Well, I wasn't there, but from what I was told, you know, he was in the store shopping. So people walked up, you know, trying to talk shit or whatever. And he was like, yo, I ain't trying to hear that shit right now. And then one of the people reached into a bag. So he didn't know what they were going for. So that's when he pulled his shit out. And that's kind of what happened with that situation. And, the cops caught him before he even got to in the parking lot before he got to the car.
Right. And I guess even though he didn't actually hit anybody, you know, he was charged with aggravated assault.
Yeah, just for the whole point of pulling the gun out.
Right. And then he ended up doing how many years?
Well, he actually got probation for that because it was a nonviolent situation. but he ended up violating because he didn't want to go to probation. So he went to probation, and they sent him to like a, God, what do you call where they keep horses at? Stables? And they were making him clean horse shit. And he was like, I ain't fuck that shit, Bun B. I ain't going back. I'm not doing that shit no more. But my thing was, at the time when he ended up violating, I was like, well, now you got to go to prison and smell shit anyway. So you would have been done with all of this by now. But that's just kind of who he was, man. If he didn't want to do it, he wasn't doing it.
Pimp C gets locked up, and even though the record label did not, believe in you as a solo artist, you started just going crazy, and you were showing up on everybody's album. I remember that's when you and I met. You were like guest appearance on everybody.
Well, there was a clause in the UGK contract at the time that said if one of us died or went to jail, the other person can get another partner and still record as UGK at a reduced rate. And I was like, I'm not recording with nobody, you know what I'm saying, else. And there were a lot of people initially who were like, telling me, man, I should just go on with my career. Pimp's going to prison, because at the time he had 7 years. And there was no saying that there would be anything there for us when he came home. But I was like, I'm not going to leave this guy at his, at the worst time in his life. And I'm going to do my best to make sure that there's something there for him when he comes back home. And we actually had, at the time, I was watching the whole Free Yayo that was happening at that same time, when Tony Yayo was locked up and G-Unit and Eminem and everybody were wearing the Free Yayo shirts and screaming Free Yayo on the record. So I just kind of took a cue from that and started doing Free Pimp C. So I had a guy who was making me custom shirts all the time, and I would just wear the custom shirts. Because people and it's a crazy thing, because people always try to say that I was selling Free Pimp C shirts, but I never sold a Pimp C shirt in my life. You know what I'm saying? Because it was easy for me to just go and make a shirt, and I wasn't really into merch or anything at that time like that. I just wanted to make sure whenever people saw me, that they saw that. And then for the people that kept saying you should go on with your career, I was like, nah, this UGK for life. You know what I'm saying? I even got the tattoo, UGK for life, on me.
Well, speaking of G-Unit, you actually recorded with 50 Cent on the song As the World Turns.
Yeah, and this was before the whole G-Unit thing. He was still a solo artist. He was with Tone and Poke back then with Trackmasters. So I got a call from Rich Nice that works with Sway. He works with Sway right now. And Rich Nice called me and asked me if I wanted to, rock with this new kid that he was working with. And I didn't know anything about him. I was more interested in rapping over a Trackmasters beat, Tone and Poke, because they were like some of the hottest producers in the game at that time. So I thought it would be ill for me to do a verse over one of their beats. And the one thing I can say is the 50 Cent I met that day, aside from probably being, 40 pounds heavier, is the same 50 Cent you see today. This was how to rob an MC 50 Cent. So he already knew that cats were going to try to come for him at that time, and he didn't give a shit. This was before the stabbing, and this was before the shooting. This was all of that. And I kept saying, like, man, I wonder what this dude's gonna probably chill the fuck out after getting shot 9 times, man. And that's something that happens. If you get shot like that, you either come out, give your life to God, move away from that life, or you go even harder. And I guess we know which side he chose.
So then Pimp C comes out.
Yes.
And I remember there was a video of you waiting outside the prison complex, and you were like so happy, to see your homie.
Oh, yeah, because I didn't really want to go visit him that much, because he had baby mamas and he had his wife at the time. And so everybody was kind of fighting over visitation. So I didn't really visit him now. I visit him a lot in the county because there's more hours to go see somebody at the county. But in prison, I didn't want to get in the way of all that stuff. And then Pimp used to be able to call me from prison. Like, I won't say what unit or who, but there was a certain prison that he was locked up in where they would let him actually go in the office and make phone calls. So Pimp would actually call me on the phone, tell me about different records that he was listening to in the library. That's where he got the idea, actually, while in prison, for doing Players Anthem, was by listening to the Project Pat album and saying, man, Pat got a hit on that motherfucker, man. He was curious as to how big it was in the streets. And I'm like, well, people fuck with Project Pat, but that single didn't really blow. He's like, nah, man, that's a fucking hit record. So when he came home, he called Paul and them and was like, man, we want to remake that record. And Paul was like, dawg, we got thousands of beats. We can make you a fresh beat. It's not, you say, no, that beat is a hit. I just need those reels. I need that beat. And so the original version of International Players Anthem was us in 3 6 Mafia. But they had just won their Oscar. They were renegotiating their deal as artists. And so they got into it with the label. And so the label stopped them from doing features as recording artists, as rappers. They were still able to sell beats because they didn't have a production deal necessarily. So they ended up, and if there's a snippet that came out back then where you would hear them on the snippet. And so the snippet came out during All-Star LA. All-Star game in LA. And Big Boy and Andre both got the snippet separately. So Big Boy was like, I love it. Can I just rap to the drums? I love the drums. I want to freak the drums out and just rap over the drums. So when you hear him come in on Players Anthem, it's originally just him rapping over the drums. Andre was the opposite. Andre was like, I like the sample. I don't want no drums on my verse. And so that's how you hear the song like it is now. It's really crazy how it turned out.
Yeah. I mean, International Players Anthem came out, huge song, nominated for a Grammy again.
Yes. I went to that one.
You went to that one?
Yeah, but I lost the South Side. Kanye ain't coming.
Still an incredible song.
Yeah, I don't take anything away from Southside. Southside was a great song. Of course, I feel like mine was better. But then Kanye reciprocated and tried to give us an award saying our video was actually better than his when he won. So it's all good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in November of 2007, I met Pimp C for the first and only time.
Oh, wow.
I was friends with his manager.
Rick
Martin. Exactly. He put us, he called me up. Oh, I'm in the studio with Pimp. We came over there. I was going to do an interview with him, but he didn't have his haircut.
Oh, that was a no-no then.
Yeah.
That was a no-no.
He wasn't going to do it. But I remember Pimp, he talked the entire time, just story to story to story. And each story was crazier than the next one. Like
He was one of the best storytellers I've ever seen. Only person I know that tells better stories than him is Estevan Oriol. Because he has all the old Cypress Hill stories.
Okay. I mean, it was an incredible meeting, and then Rick Martin calls me a few weeks later to give me the news.
Yeah. Because Rick wasn't his manager for that long. It was a very short time period.
Exactly. When you heard the news about Pimp C passing, how bad did it hit you?
The first call came from a friend of mine named Albie. He called us and said that he was on, this was back when people were on message boards and shit like that. And I think he was on like a Black Planet message board or something. And he was like, somebody typed that Pimp C had just died in a hotel in LA. And so I was like, that can't be. You know what I'm saying? I would have heard something about that. So I called his mom and asked her, had she talked to him? And for the first time in his life, in our career, he did not call her at night. He always called his mom before he went to bed. That was the only night he never called her. And then we got the call, the confirmation, and I lost it, man. I'll be honest. I lost it. I get emotional now thinking about it. It was probably the most life-altering moment I've ever had. You know what I'm saying? Because it was, there was nothing that would have led up to that, right? It was just very kind of the moment kind of thing. And I don't think I'd ever had anybody that was that close to me. I mean, I had aunts and uncles and, friends and classmates, but nobody that I had that close of a relationship with died. And so it was very, very hard to process. And when the radio station called to see if I wanted to talk about it, I was in tears when they called. And I did pretty much the whole interview crying, but I thought it was important for young Black men to see that it's okay to mourn, it's okay to cry, you don't have to be tough through those moments, because holding those emotions in is kind of what fucks you up for real later. And then one of the calls that I got that really kind of helped me work through it was from RZA. And I'd never met RZA before, I'd never talked to RZA. I still to this day have no idea how he got my phone number, but he had just lost Old Dirty prior to that. And so he just called me to give his condolences and kind of talk about, because Dirty was RZA's cousin. So they had a very, he had known him all his life. And so he understood the dynamic that Pimp and I had. and just really kind of talked to me for probably about 20 minutes, just about, dealing with grief and all that kind of shit, man. And that really helped me in that moment.
Did they announce the cause of death at the end?
Not really. It was a complication of the drugs, but also sleep apnea. Pimp had gained a lot of weight while he was in prison because he didn't really have to do shit. You know what I'm saying? And he wasn't a push-up kind of guy. So like a lot of guys come out of prison because, they got to get in shape and be, quick and be ready to handle anything that might happen. Pimp didn't really have those issues in prison because everybody loved him. So he was just in there just kind of eating. He was working in the kitchen. You know what I'm saying? He had money on his books, you know what I'm saying? People taking care of him. So, he came out. Pimp probably went in maybe an XL and came out like a 3X. You know what I'm saying? And came home, obviously wasn't working out. And so he had gained a lot of weight, you know what I'm saying, in that downtime. And that was when he died, Pimp was probably a 4X.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad. It's like when you look at, we talked about DJ Screw, dying from lean. And then, of course, you have Pimp C, which, it seems like it was related to his passing. And then you look at 2018, you have Fredo Santana dying at 27. It's one of those things. And you talked about that you used to drink it, but you quit.
Yeah, I quit before Pimp passed. So I didn't have that to deal with when he passed away. I started having stomach issues, and I just dropped it. I usually did everything first and quit everything first. So I was smoking fry before a lot of dudes were really smoking fry. I quit before it became a thing. I was popping pills. I took my first ecstasy MDMA pill in like 95. So by the time ecstasy became popular, I was done with that. I was sipping lean before a lot of dudes sipped lean before it got popular. Then I quit before I remember when I was sipping lean, my friends literally used to call me a drug addict. Like, that's a drug. That's like some hardcore shit. All those dudes still sip lean right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially heroin.
Yeah, no, that's how the body registers it. Once it goes in the bloodstream, it registers as heroin. And that's why the addictions are so hard to beat. People get really strong, really bad withdrawals off syrup.
It's sad, man. It was such a, because I remember when I was in the studio, I brought in my homie Justin Slayer, the porn star, because Pimp wanted to meet him. He wanted to meet him, and I remember Justin was talking to him, and he was like, Pimp was playing us some shit, and he's like, "Oh, who's singing that chorus?" And Pimp's like, "No, that's me. I'm singing those choruses."
Right.
And just such a musical talent that didn't sound like anybody. That was so distinctive and so different, and had these morals and ideas that he stuck to all the way to the end, man. It was just such a loss.
He was a man of his words, and he was a man of his standards, right? And the only compromise Pimp did that I ever saw was the green to be on Big Pimpin', because he was adamantly against it. And he really probably only did it for me, to be honest, because if it was just up to them asking him to do the song, and I knew that there were certain ways you had to talk to Pimp in order to get things done if you knew that he wasn't going to be crazy about it. And a lot of times it didn't even work. You know what I'm saying? Reverse psychology didn't work. That was one of the few instances where he knew it was going to be a big record. He was just concerned about perception. So that's why he literally started to smoke it out, pouring up, keep it lean in my cup. He wanted it to be very distinctive about who he was and what he was into and the culture that he came from on that song.
After he passed, you started doing your solo albums.
Yeah.
More solo
albums. I did one while he was locked up.
Yeah, but you
because Jive didn't want to sign me as a solo artist. They were like, well, Pimp did the beats, he sang the hooks. You're just kind of I'm the Robin to the Batman, so to speak. But Jay Prince believed in my talent. Jay Prince signed me. We went to Asylum, and my first solo album on Asylum was out of everything Asylum dropped, the biggest selling album they had. And when Pimp came home and we went back to fulfill the Jive deal, the first thing Barry Weiss did was apologize to me. Because he was like, man, we apologize. We didn't think you could do it. And he was like, you guys sold 750,000 of that indie. We probably would have sold 1.5 million. I was like, nah, because it was a different energy. I did that album to prove you wrong.
Well, which brings us to this current album.
Right.
And you actually took 5 years off between solo albums to do this, because I guess you said it wasn't really fun anymore, and
making music without Pimp turned into a job, and my career never really felt like a job. And while he was in jail, there was always the anticipation that he would eventually be released and then we get back to the music. So that was a dynamic. But then when he died, it was a totally different dynamic. So it became like, well, I'm gonna do this in honor of him because I knew he wouldn't want me to quit. But then I just wasn't enjoying the experience anymore. And so there were other things. I was like, let me try other things in my life. So I was able to start teaching at Rice University, and I spent a little while writing for Vice News and stuff. So we found other ways to, but I was still doing shows, right? I've been booked my entire career. I still do at least 40 to 60 shows a year, every year, whether I release music or not.
Yeah, well, I think it's so dope, and you kind of brushed on it, but the fact that you became, I guess, a professor at Rice University?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was crazy because I didn't go to college.
Right.
So to go to one of the, Rice University is the number 15 university in the country. It's the number 1 university in Texas, but it's still the number 15 university in the country. And to just be asked to come on that campus and speak my truth to the youth was an amazing thing. You know what I'm saying? I always credit Dr. Penn with helping me evolve into another person, because that's when I started to take everything I knew and instead of giving that game to young artists, giving it directly to the people who wanted to know more about the culture.
Yeah, I wish more people from the culture did that. Because I interviewed Matthew Knowles recently, and he's a professor
at U of H.
Texas University.
Yeah,
U of H.
Well, he was at U of H then. I think he's at Texas Southern now. Because I went and spoke at his class when he was at U of H.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I wish more people in hip hop would do that, man. I think we have a lot of information to tell people, and people absorb it from us a lot more than just some professor they never heard of.
Right. And Ninth is doing it. Ninth is doing it out in North Carolina.
Oh, Ninth Wonder, he's been doing that.
Play from Kid and Play was teaching in Florida. And, God, I can't think of his name. Money B was actually teaching a course as well.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Money B was teaching a course.
I know Money B. I'm going to reach out and ask him about that.
You need to, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. And, on the new album, Return of the Trill, a lot of interesting guest features on it. Well, it says featuring Pimp C, but there was just a Pimp C interview, I guess, that you put in there?
Yeah. The estate was trying to give us a song, but we just couldn't get it together in time.
Yeah.
So I'll probably put that on my next album.
Okay.
But I still wanted his voice on the album. And so Corey Moe was like, I did a beat, and I incorporated some Pimp into it. And then when he played it, I was like, oh, yeah, I can rock with this. I can do something with this.
Well, Lil Wayne is on it.
Yes.
And that's someone you've collaborated with for a while.
Yeah, I'm probably one of the first people outside of New Orleans that Wayne rapped with. I've been knowing Lil Wayne personally since about 14, 15 years old.
Oh, since the early Cash Money days.
Yes. I was the only person that featured on Cash Money's records for years that wasn't signed to Cash Money.
Okay. 2 Chainz is on it.
Yes, an old friend. I've been knowing him since his Titty Boy days. Before he was with Luda, I've known Titty.
Yeah. T.I., another person you've collaborated with a lot.
Known him for many years. I was right there with him, right? That Never Scared era, back with those trap music mixtapes, and I was on probably the 3rd or 4th major record he was on, the Reaction remix with Killer Mike. So I've known Tip for many, many years. I remember when he was like, I would go to Atlanta, he was like, yeah, man, my girl got a studio. If you ever need to record, my girl got a studio. She was in the group Escape, and her and her homegirl got a studio. And that's when Candy and Tiny were writing with Shakespeare back at the time. They were doing like Bills and all that kind of shit, different records that they were writing for other people. A lot of people don't even realize how prolific a songwriter Tiny is outside of Escape.
And speaking of Killer Mike, Run the Jewels is on it.
Yes, Killer Mike, again, kid, I've known him since his earliest days in the Dungeon Family. Always thought he was one of the best rappers out. Never got the credit that he deserves as a lyricist. Even with all the fame and all the attention, I still believe that Killer Mike will go down as one of the best songwriters in hip hop.
I talk to Killer Mike all the time. He's absolutely dope. And I assume, I didn't check the credits, but I assume that LP did that beat.
Yeah, it was originally to another beat. It was originally to a beat produced by Big Crit. When I sent it off, and when L was laying his verse, L was like, man, I really would like to do something with this song. I like the song, I like the vibe. I would love to do something with the beat. And I'm not finna turn that down. I've always been a fan of L's, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, hell yeah, man, knock yourself out.
Right. And then you got Giggs, who I interviewed out in the UK.
Yeah.
You actually have a British rapper
Yeah.
on your album.
Well, again, I've known Giggs before. People are just now hearing about Giggs from his affiliation with Drake. But I knew him through Dizzy Rascal. He and Dizzy are longtime friends. And he and Dizzy did a song called Nutcracker after Giggs came home. And I was like, man, that shit is hard. That dude can really, really rap. He's like, yeah, man, he's on the way up. And he's the one, Dizzy was telling me back then, he's the one that the streets fuck with. He's the one that's official. Nobody's testing his gangster. Nobody's questioning him on what he's done or the work he's put in. He's the dude from here. He's the real one that when he gets a shot, is really gonna blow. So I was like, I need to really fuck with that dude. And eventually we ended up doing a song together.
Oh yeah, he's dope, man. After our interview, we hung out, in London, and he took me to go meet Skepta and that whole crew, and yeah, man, he's a dope motherfucker.
Yeah,
right
Giggs
there.
is official. Giggs is fully official.
Yeah, and then of course you got Lil Kiki, Slim Thug, Ape on MJG, and Big Crit. I guess is all over the project.
Yeah. This project wouldn't have happened without a person like Big Crit, because I had taken a break off from rap and I wasn't really crazy about it, and my wife was the one that convinced me to, look, you got to get back in the lab. You got a lot of shit that people need to hear, things you need to talk about that nobody else is going to talk about or address in the way that you would. And I was like, yeah, but this shit not really fun. Huh? She was like, well, you need to fuck with somebody whose company you enjoy. You know what I'm saying? So Crit was on the list, Paul was on the list, and Jazzy Faye was on the list. So Crit was the first person we called, and Crit literally dropped everything. And he was like, not only will I make you beats, OG, I'm going to connect you with other people that make music. So there's a lot of songs I did with up and coming producers like God, what's his name? Super Mario. This kid named Black Metaphor. You know what I'm saying? Some of these kids who are making incredible music right now. Those songs aren't out yet. They'll be coming soon. But he was the one that, he's literally the Paul Schaefer to my David Letterman. He's the musical coordinator. So everything sonically that you hear and the direction that we went through as far as the music, that's all a credit to Crit. You know what I'm saying? Really just taking it full time and making himself absolutely available to me, And we did this whole thing out of pocket. There's no label involved or any of that. So I would I would say I would have a show in Tennessee or Georgia. I would fly into Atlanta, go to the studio with Crit, record, jump in the car, drive to the city where the show was, do the show, then come back to Atlanta and go back in the studio.
It's a dope album, man. I've been sitting with it for the last couple of days.
I mean, we got a lot of the stuff that we wanted to put on the album, we didn't because sample clearance was holding us up. This album was supposed to come out in March. And we kept fighting to get certain songs cleared, and just a matter of trying to contact people and how much money they wanted for the music and stuff. And we were like, well, look, we need to put something out, generate some income so we could pay for this. Otherwise, I'm digging in my family savings, and we don't want to do all of that right now,
You also have a Bun B's Greatest Hits album that's out or coming out?
I don't know who did that. I'm not really sure where that comes from. Somebody sent me a picture of it, and I had no idea what that was because I don't own the rights to that shit, so I can't put that shit out,
Okay.
Universal
Yeah,
Sony,
man.
I think, owns the UGK library.
Okay. And it seems that the Trill name has always been a constant in everything you do for decades at this point. All your albums have the Trill name associated with it. And I guess Trill was originally a penitentiary term?
Yeah, Trill came out to penitentiaries in Texas, and a guy by the name of Spoon Guy came home and started throwing the term around. Then this other dude, Lil Block, started throwing the term around. And so that's kind of how it started really penetrating through Port Arthur. And it was a term that we would use in Port Arthur to separate ourselves from everybody else in the area, because we're from an area known as the Golden Triangle. So there's Port Arthur, there's Beaumont, and there's Orange, Texas. And people try to equate those towns with each other. And so that was our way of separating ourselves from Beaumont people and Orange people, was the term Trill. And so when we started making music, it was a natural part of our vocabulary, our personal UGK vocabulary, and it just ended up being something that people gravitated to that term to separate them from other people, and it just kind of caught wildfire,
Yeah, I always thought it meant true and real put together.
That was the initial explanation that people were using when they couldn't think of another way. I think that kind of fits more in the way that maybe a Mac Dre was using Trill, because Mac Dre started saying Trill a couple of years after we did, but he was spelling it T-R-E-A-L.
Right, and then there's of course Trill Entertainment with Boosie and Webby and them.
Right, which Pimp was a co-owner of.
Exactly.
Right. And
Exactly.
so that's how I ended up
Boosie's
doing songs with Webby and them, because when Pimp got locked up, I got with Mel and Turk, and I was like, look, whatever, I can't make beats, right? But whatever else I can do to help this label hit, I'm willing to do it. And they was like, man, we got this hit record, man, we'd love to get you on it. And that was Gimme That. And then the rest is history.
Yeah, which became Webby's first hit.
Absolutely.
I mean, you talk about Bun B in helping break people's careers. The first time I heard Jeezy was a record with you.
Yeah, I was actually, it's funny because I did a song with Jeezy, and I was in the studio recording with Jeezy, which we were all kind of, you know, we knew each other through the BMF movement, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the same day I did my song Trap or Die with Jeezy, I mean, it would it have been Trap or Die?
No, I don't think
No,
so.
it would have been Money Over Here.
Yeah.
I think Money Over Here was the first song I did with him. But actually, I met Gucci that same day in the same studio. So I was in the hallway, and Gucci was going through the hallway, and he had the White Tee song at the time. And he asked me if I wanted to get on the remix. So I just went in the other room and hopped on the remix with him. And it was crazy because he had on rose gold jewelry, and rose gold was that was like a new thing in jewelry. And I was like, man, I've been wanting to give me some rose gold jewelry, man. Where did you get it from? He's like, I got it from Texas. I got it from Houston, from Johnny in Houston. Not TV Johnny, but King Johnny. There's actually two jewelers named Johnny in Houston. There was a bit of tension with that back then. But that was where I first met Gucci. And it was strange because they ended up doing the Icy record, and then the beef happened with all of that. And that was sad because they actually made really good music together, I thought.
Yeah, man. Imagine the two of them, if they continued to collaborate, it would have been crazy.
I think they performed that song together one time.
Yeah. You're actually now a grandfather.
Oh, yeah, 4 times over.
4 times over.
Yeah, I keep telling my son, you're going to make me kin to everybody in Houston. You keep making babies.
Okay. You know, and you talked about how really now that you're a grandfather, your priorities are totally different.
Absolutely. I don't live my life for myself anymore. And I don't use my career as an excuse to travel and make money. I used to be like, well, I need to go get this money because I got to take care of my kids. But now my kids are grown and they have their own jobs, their own careers. So it's really just me and my wife. And there's a lot of things that we missed out on because I didn't take vacations. Probably my first like vacation was probably about 7 years ago. So I'd never done anything for myself. Everything was always work, get that money. And my wife was like, look, you need to relax. You're too tense. You're anxious around me. I don't like it. You need to go somewhere and relax. And I didn't want to do it because she wanted to go to a beach. She loves the water. She loves the beach. And I'm fat. You know, going outside in the sun is not comfortable for me all the time, just to be honest. But man, that first vacation, we laid out on the beach and I passed out like in the first 10 minutes. I was done. And now that's pretty much all we do. When we have spare time, we go and live our life for ourselves. I don't give my life over to my career and to other people like I used to. I will stop anything for my grandkids. People know if I have to be somewhere and I got to do something like pick up my granddaughter from school or go bring something to my grandson, it's a wrap. It's not happening.
Well, let me tell you, man, for all the rappers that are watching this, all the aspiring rappers, all the established rappers, and I mean, everyone watches VladTV at the end of the day, like, but really, to have a career like Bun B and to be where he is today with a legendary catalog, being a married man, being a professor, being a grandfather, this is really what I think all artists should aspire to.
Yeah, and then everybody's not going to be a professor, right? But you should always aspire for greatness. And people think once they get the record deal that's it. That's the height of who they're going to be is through their music career. But everybody else I see that really makes an impact culturally and, to be honest, gets really rich, gets rich outside of music. You know, Jay-Z sold a lot of records, but he got rich because he translated it to business. The same thing with Puffy. You know what I'm saying? Same things with people like Russell Simmons. These people all started in the music business, but then translated that to other industries. And because they didn't limit themselves, made a shit ton more money than they did. Even a person like 50.
Well, I mean, look at Dr. Dre. That's the best example.
Hey,
of that.
there it is. I wish I made headphones.
I know, right? Well, listen, Bun B, man, you and I go back many, many years.
Yes, sir.
You know, since 2000. Maybe four,
I want to say. That Tupac mixtape would have been 2004.
2004.
Didn't I do the Biggie tape? Did I do the Biggie tape too?
You didn't. You knew about the Biggie tape, which is why you did the Tupac tape.
There it is.
We didn't have any guest appearances on the Biggie tape.
Yeah, that's what I said. I didn't do the Biggie tape, but that's
Yeah.
why I was fucking with you for the Tupac tape, because the Biggie tape was
Exactly.
sick.
And quite honestly, man, like the Tupac tape was my springboard into what VladTV is today. So I just want to personally thank you for being part of that project.
No, man, I'm proud of what you've been able to do, man. Been able to translate this into other things and other industries. And like I said, you started with music, but you got rich doing other shit. You're an example too.
Yeah, man. I just gotta get as rich as Dre and them.
So let's make some headphones. Let's get on it.
Let's do it. Bun B, man, always a pleasure. Congratulations, to you and your family and everything you've accomplished, man. Rest in peace to Pimp C. His music will, has lived on way past, his life, which is what I think every musician aspires to do.
Absolutely.
And only the best for you.
Thank you so much for having me, Vlad.